There's a story with Alter Rebbe that I don't remember all the details. And in general, it's a story with not many details. In other words, it's not a story that the previous Rebbe tells. It's a story that Chassidim tell. And essentially, the story is that there was an occasion, there was a circumstance where somebody was complimenting the Alter Rebbe, speaking very, very highly about him, talking about his greatness and so on. And the Alter Rebbe sat there or stood there listening to all of these accolades with a look of incredible happiness. He looked incredibly satisfied and glowing, so to speak, from all of the compliments that he was being offered. And it seemed uncharacteristic, it seemed odd that the Alter Rebbe would so overtly be happy about the fact that people were saying nice things about him. So later on, somebody who was very close to the Alter Rebbe asked the Alter Rebbe the significance of that particular tzehivas panim. What was he so radiant about? What was he so happy about when being complimented? And of course, for a person like the Alter Rebbe, these kind of celebrations of self are of very little value. They're not into how great they are, but what they can do and so on. And the Alter Rebbe answered very plainly, Alter Rebbe answered, what do you mean? It's a halacha in Torah, it's a klal in Torah, it's a mishnah, that when you experience yisurim, when you experience painful things, you're supposed to greet them, accept them with love and with joy. In other words, that the Alter Rebbe's happiness, Alter Rebbe's external joy, was actually covering over a deep pain and an inner frustration from the compliments that he was being given. This story has numerous equals. There are other stories in the same spirit. And the basic spirit of the story is that real people, very, very real people, special people. And of course, the meaning of a real person is that they're very, very deeply in touch with themselves on the deepest levels. And that they're also empowered to bring out what's happening on the inside to the outside. It is very frequent, and perhaps even more than frequent, it's common, that the external countenance, the external expression, the external mood that you see is actually inverse, it's equal and opposite to the internal sentiment that they're feeling at that particular time. For example, there's a story with the Mittel Rebbe, where the Mittel Rebbe saw Baruch Kodshe that a calamity, a terrible tragedy was going to befall his own son, Reb Nachum, and he responded to this ominous anticipation with incredible joy. He told the Chassidim to celebrate and to be joyous, and finally his son fell off a horse and his life was in danger, and his response continued to be incredible simcha, and then a great miracle occurred and his son recovered and lived for many, 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 many years. And the Mittel Rebbe would go on to explain that he anticipated, he saw the great gevures, the terrible gevures, and he was hoping to be shattering those gevures with simcha. And evidently, and as the story goes, he was successful at it. And like I said, this is just two examples. There are many other examples where the external mood of a tzaddik, of a rebbe, of a nasi is one, and the internal mood is exactly the opposite. And it goes both ways. Oftentimes you can see a tzaddik being very withdrawn, very in himself, somber, almost the opposite of joy, and actually experiencing an incredibly deep joy. And it shows itself in this pensiveness, in this thoughtfulness, in this lack of demonstration. And there is an understanding by Hasidim that in general, real people, what you see on the outside is first of all, far less than exists on the inside. And second of all, frequently, it's the opposite of how things are on the inside. I'm going to give you a modern day example. The previous Rebbe was a very, very serious Rebbe. It was very common for the previous Rebbe to cry. They would sing very, very pensive nigunim, very, very meditative nigunim, very melancholy nigunim. And he would cry copious tears. I believe I read once in the Kfar Chabad magazine that there was a groaner. We all know the groaners. Rabbi labeled groaners all gesund sein, larichas von B'shalom Tevis, to be separated from his brothers, Harav Yitzchak David Groner, who was the Rebbe Shliach to Australia, and Harav Moshe Groner. But they had an older brother who was not a Lubavitcher. He lived in Yerushalayim. I believe he was a Kaliner Chassid. He was old enough, pardon me, to have come to see the previous Rebbe when he visited America in 1929 and 1930. And if I'm not wrong, he described the previous Rebbe asking to sing the Alter Rebbe's Nigun. And they brought a bowl, and he cried into the bowl, and he literally collected tears in a sufficient quantity that it warranted collecting the tears in a bowl. I mean, at kedekach, would cry bitter tears. There's occasions, there's descriptions where the previous Rebbe would say, the Alter Rebbe's Nigun would actually stand up and he would say, Kol ha'omer shmua b'shein emre yiyah ki'ilu ba'ala shmua emet kenegde ezo. The Alter Rebbe was present and so on. The opposite of that, of course, is our Rebbe, whose entire Nesius is defined by an obsession, by a preoccupation with Simcha, where even the most pensive Nigunim and the most meditative Nigunim, like Lechatchila Riber, and even the Alter Rebbe's Nigun itself, or the Mittler Rebbe's Kapelle, and so on and so forth, he would reinvigorate them, re-inspire them, renew them to become, in effect, marches and Nigunim of incredible joy and effervescence and overflowing expression and so on. And of course, the story goes, the rumor is, and I believe it's more than a rumor, although I can't tell you line and verse where it is, that the Rebbe was once asked about this, and the Rebbe said that the previous Rebbe's nature, his personality, was he was an extrovert. The previous Rebbe by nature was an incredibly happy, free person. And therefore he could afford to show this outer melancholy, this outer emotion of bitterness and sadness and gevura, because his foundation was joy. And the Rebbe continued to say that his nature is that he's a marashcheira. His nature is that he's an introvert, he's naturally a sadder person, or more withdrawn person, and therefore he cannot afford to demonstrate this on the outside. He must externally show joy. And it's also known amongst Chassidim that the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's wife, our Rebbetzin, at a certain point during the Rebbe's Nesius, asked that they should sing happier songs, because the Rebbe would cry. They would sing these very deep meditative songs, these old Chabad Nigunim, and the Rebbe would cry. You can see in the films, every time they sing a Nigun which is more meaningful and more deep and more meditative, the Rebbe pulls out his kerchief and wipes his eyes. You can see that he's wiping his tears. And the way I understand it was, the Rebbe said he would come home from Fabrengens, and that heavy mood would bring it with them into the house. It didn't end when the Fabrengen ended. So therefore the Rebbe asked that they should sing Freilich and Nagun. There's also another example for this, also with the previous Rebbe and the Rebbe, where somebody once asked how come the previous Rebbe was so much more complimentary and thankful when Chassidim did, relatively speaking, small things, and the Rebbe was so demanding and so exacting, and no matter what you did was not enough. And as we all know, the famous quote of the Rebbe, which we repeated so many times, you can rest assured, you can be comfortable that I will never ever be satisfied. You'll never make me happy. I'll always want more. And again, the rumor is, and I believe it's much more than a rumor, that the Rebbe said, the Rebbe de Shved is given Pnimiyusa Gevura. The previous Rebbe's personality was actually one of Gevura. And therefore he couldn't possibly show that Gevura, because the Gevura of a Rebbe would have been fire. So therefore he demonstrated on the outside chesed, love, warmth, and so on. And I am Pnimiyusi Gevura, chesed, pardon me, my inside is chesed, therefore I can be on the outside Gevura. These are just some examples. And you can find more examples for the same, where by tzaddikim, by rebbes, by real people. And I'm trying to use language which doesn't only make this the status of a holy person, but just simply a deeper human being, a bigger human being. What's happening on the inside is not necessarily what's reflected on the outside. Just to give you one more example, the Rebbe Marash always had a smile on his face, always had a smile on his face. And wherever he laid his eyes, wherever he looked at, any person he would turn his gaze towards would begin to tremble out of fear. And they had no idea why they were so afraid, because the man was laughing, was smiling. This was the power of the Rebbe Marash. Why am I saying this introduction? Why am I giving you this insight? Because we're learning this Maamar, V'ahavta Savaya Lekecha, and this is our third of 4 parts on the Maamar. And the Maamar is about the first Parsha Krishma and the second Parsha Krishma. The first section of the Shema and the second section of the Shema. And the argument that the Maamar makes is that the first Parsha of Krishma is, these are my words now, is on the inside chesed, and therefore on the outside that's gavura. The first Parsha of Krishma is about an overabundance, an incredible flow or deluge of godly light. And therefore the response, the keli to it, is gevura, is to withdraw, to try to raise yourself up, to be lost in godliness. The second Parsha of Krishma is exactly the other way around. The second Parsha of Krishma is about tzimtzum, where there is a diminution in the godly light which is being drawn down, and therefore the keli which accommodates it is chesed. And this is very typical, it's very logical in the world of Torah, in the world of truth, that when one has an enormous amount of oir, the response should be gevura. When one has a much more limited oir, the response should be chesed. So let me now briefly set up the class, and then we will proceed. In the previous class, amongst the things that the Rebbe did was explain the 2 words Shema Yisrael. And he explained that both the word Shema and the word Yisrael constitute an isarusa delatata. They constitute the idea that if you're going to get from godliness, from on high, a great light, a great flow, a great gift, you have to raise up. And he explained the word Shema, Shin Mem Ayin, in a number of ways, as representing raising up sparks of godliness from a lower level to a higher level, till Bina, as the word Ayin, the letter Ayin represents. And then the word Yisrael represented even higher than that, Chochmah, even higher than Chochmah. And therefore the translation of the 2 words, Shema and Yisrael, is not only a meditation and paying attention and so on, but it's the notion of presenting ourselves to God. Isarusa dilatata, an arousal, an awakening from below, where the person presents himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and as a consequence of that, there's a return. God gives back. And the return is called Havaya Lekenu, and then it's called Havaya Echad, and then it's followed up by V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha B'chol Meidecha, as you'll see in the class. And the point that Rebbe makes is that a Yid who's on a deeper level, on a higher level, who's much, much more tuned in to godliness, meaning to say, his life is not defined by the practical performance of mitzvahs per se. I'm not chas v'shalom saying that he's not particular about mitzvahs maisias, but he's such a deep person, he's such a big person, that mitzvahs maisias are exactly that, the maisa aspect of his life. But his life is a pnimius life. His life is a life of godly light, and godly life, and godly energy, and godly inspiration. He presents himself to Hashem in the 2 words Shema Yisrael, and he opens himself up, he makes himself a vessel for godliness to be reciprocated and to be raining down upon him, that he should be filled with godly light in the words of Shema Elokeinu and the Shema Echad. Next week, we're going to learn the 4th part of this Maamar. And in that class, we're going to focus on exactly the opposite scenario, a person who's quite distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where the priority is mitzvahs maisias, and in his case, the response to that is an inyan of Ab, of 72, of Chesed, as you'll see in Mitzvah Hashem next week. So let's leave next week for next week, and let's go to tonight's class. We're on line 95. V'hine. We just explained, and I repeated it very, very briefly, that the word Shema Shem Ayin and the word Yisrael Shir Keil constitute the Yid presenting himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a Sarusa de Latata, Sarusa de Liela, raising himself up to godliness, so that godliness should manifest upon him. Says the Rebbe, the consequence of this presenting of self, this Isarusa de Latata, this Bittel, this Halos man, is that godliness is rained down upon him, comes down to him, Lias Havaya, Lekeinu V'Gim. That the level of godliness, which is called Havaya, should become Elokeinu. Unser Gott, our God. The word Elokeinu means our God. I don't know why whenever I say Elokeinu and I say Unser Gott, it reminds me of a vision of the Torah. I'm sorry I'm digressing, but I just can't help myself. The Rebbe spoke like Beimer, Tavshin Chav Zayin, 1967, a week before the Six-Day War began, or so, a week and a half, 2 weeks. And there is a sikha there where the Rebbe talks to the children about the fact that the Ayer Brider and Schwester in Eretz HaKedesh in the Heilige Land, your brothers and sisters in the Holy Land, gefinnen sich jetzt in a lager. They find themselves in a condition of difficulty, and they will certainly come out of that situation with great success, and so forth and so on. The Rebbe gives great brachas. And he says to the children that they have an obligation to worry about their brothers and sisters in the Holy Land by doing more Torah mitzvahs, another pasuk of Chumash, another Mishnah of Mishnayos. And he adds the idea of having Ahavas Yisrael and sharing it with another Jewish boy or another Jewish girl, that they also should increase in Torah mitzvahs on behalf of the Yid and Eretz Yisrael. And the Rebbe finishes off the Sikha by quoting the psukim from the beginning of Parshas Vaeschanan. It was a Sunday. The Lag B'Mpeid was Sunday, and obviously that week is Vaeschanan. So the Rebbe finishes off that sikha with the words, a whole bunch of things. But V'hoya Havaya, V'hoya Hashem li leikim, der Eibishter v'zayin unser Gott. And those words, unser Gott, our God, grip me. I can hear that every time I come across the word Elokeinu in Chassidus, it makes me think of those very, very impassioned words of the Rebbe. We finishes off the Sikha, how the Eibishter is going to protect us, and we're going to be His people. We're going to be His nation. The Rebbe quotes the Psukim and translates every Hebrew word into Yiddish. We're going to be the Eibishter, and the Eibishter is going to be honest. And that's what the word Elokeinu means, unser God. And as I've explained to you so many times over the years, that the difference between the word Elokim and Elokeinu is not only the possessive form, where Elokim means the God of concealment and theory, and Elokeinu means the God of concealment, which is personal to us, but that's not the case. It's actually different. Elokim means the God of concealment. Aleph Lamed Hey Yud Mem is the numerical equivalent of 86. Pei Vav, which is the Gematria Shem Elokim, and Hateva, and so on. Elokeinu doesn't mean concealment. Elokeinu means my personal God, or God, or godliness, how it's been personalized to me. Like the Rebbe always brings from the Shulchan Aruch, Keichacha v'chayesecha. How godliness have become my power, my life has become personally significant to me. So the Pasuk says, Shema Yisrael, when a Yid presents himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the bittul of Shema and the bittul of Yisrael, the consequence is Havaya Elokeinu, that the godliness of Havaya, which is Ein Sof, becomes personalized to us, to me, to each one of us. And he explains on line 97 that Havaya b'chochma b'chinas bittul v'chol. Hashem's name Havaya is in chochma, and that the concept of chochma, which is also called Havaya, is bittul v'chol. Ki ein save Baruch Hu, ki ein save Sheira. Ein Sof, godliness cannot rest ela b'chochma, on the level of chochma shu keachma, which is the power of bittul. And of course, this is the Haggadah in Tanya Perek Lamed Hey, which we've talked about so many times. It's also in Tanya, in the Pnim, in Perek Gimel a little bit, and of course also in Perek Yud Ches, that in order for the Shekhinah to rest, you have to have bittul. And the only sphera which has the bittul, which can effectively cause Ein Sof to rest, is Chochmah, because the idea of Chochmah is bittul, meaning to say most kelim, most vessels, receive godliness by taking it to themselves. And the moment a vessel receives godliness by taking it to himself, that act of taking it to itself has to do with Yeshus. Chochmah receives godliness by surrendering to the godliness. And only Chochmah has this property, has this quality. And because Chochmah surrenders to the Ein Sof, that's what makes it a Kli. And I believe in the last class I gave it the illustration from the way the Rebbe explains the Mishnah. Hashem could not find a vessel that could hold the blessings that he wants to give the Jewish people other than peace. And amongst the many questions that Rebbe asks is why the double negative? Loi Motza Ella. What would be wrong with saying Motza Kadosh Baruch Hu Kli Machzik Bracha Li Yisrael V'Hu Hashem? The Eibishter found a vessel which can hold all of the blessings in which to give the Jewish people, which is peace. And the Rebbe says a very simple thing. Hashem wants to give us Ein Sof. And because Hashem wants to give us Ein Sof, says the Mishnah, Lei Motza Kadosh Baruch Hu Keli. There is no vessel for Ein Sof. Because since what he wants to give us is infinite, and the meaning of a vessel is that it is finite, so Lei Motza Kadosh Baruch Hu Keli Machzik Bracha Li Yisrael Ela Hashalom. But peace is a blessing for those brachas. Why? Because the foundation of peace is humility, bittul. And bittul, surrendering to godliness, makes one a vessel for the infinity of godliness. And that's what Chochmah is. Chochmah is the first of the 10 spheres. And Echad Emes, Hu Lavadehu V'Yenzo Losei V'Zui Madregas HaChochmah. Chochmah's entire character is that it wants to receive godliness, not by redefining the godliness to suit itself, not by bringing the godliness to itself and accommodating the godliness to its own vessel, but by presenting itself and surrendering itself to the Ein Sof, not trying, so to speak, just opening oneself up to the Ein Sof, and that's the Eila Shalom vessel for the Ein Sof. And the Rebbe says, even in Bina and stuff won't shine, because even Bina is Yesh, like it says the pasuk Lahan Chalev Yesh. Understanding godliness has to do with ego. I bring godliness to me, as opposed to intuiting godliness, which is what Chochmah is not through Yeshus, it's through Bittul. Ela de Slapsh is Chochmah. The only place where Ein Sof can manifest is in Chochmah, because Chochmah is the only vessel that receives what it receives, not by bringing it into itself, but by surrendering it to the light, surrendering itself to the light. V'chochmah, and this particular sphere or mid of Chochmah is the one that is bechina hamachaberes liyisam shachas Ein Sof, to tie together and draw down Ein Sof into Chochmah, but not only into Chochmah, but into B'chol Eilam V'chulu, into every single world. In every single world you have Chochmah, and the Chochmah in each world is the Bittul. And the Chochmah in each world, which is the Bittul in each world, is the Keli for the Ein Sof, which is ultimately revealed in each world. Kikulam b'Chochmah sisa, each of the world is created with Chochmah, and because of the Chochmah in each world, because of the surrendering ability, because of the Hizbatlos of the Chochmah in each world, it is open to the Ein Sof. And the Rebbe continues and he says, U'keneida ma'inyin ha'teira sheb'chol elem. This is also understood based on we understand the Torah in each world. In other words, he talked about Chochmah and the unique character of Chochmah. Now he's going to say exactly the same thing, but change form. Talk about Torah. In every world there's Torah. Torah is intellect. Torah is form. Torah is understanding. But Torah is intellect. Torah is form. Torah is understanding, whose anchor, whose base is Bittul. Whose anchor and whose base is Ein Sof, is godliness. And therefore, through the Torah and through the understanding of the Torah, even if we understand it in a very Yeshus type way, we have a connection to the Ein Sof, which is manifest in the Torah. Line 102. V'hainu, this means. Kihine, and the Rebbe now develops the idea. Eid Ein Sof Baruch Hu Sevav Kalam. Godliness is Sevav Kalam. And of course, you all know what the word Sevav Kalam means, that it says in Tanya Perek Mamchas. Sevav does not mean surround, because surrounding and being inside are spatial illusions. They're illusions that have to do with space. Inside and outside have to do with here and there. And in Ruchnius there is no here and there is no there, because there is no space. So Sevav means hidden and Amale means revealed. Shema it is hidden from. It surrounds, it encompasses everything from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet. But since Sevav Kalalman is non-distinct and it shines the same light, Mirei Shad Regel, it remains in a state of hell. Another mashal to describe the Ein Seif, in addition to the concept of makif and helem, is mashal ha'igol ha'gadol ha'makif ha'sakav. That in the language of Kabbalah, the kaf, which is the rule godliness that comes into the lower world, is surrounded by the great circle. And of course, the great circle goes on Ein Seif, on a madreg of Seif of Kalalma, which has no connection to the worlds whatsoever. And the godliness of Seif of Kalalmin, and on a higher level, on a much higher level, the godliness of Igol HaGadol, in other words, the godliness of Ein Seif Shafnei Tzimtzum, cannot come down into any vessel in a revealed way, in an internalized way, because it's too potent. They're all like nothing in His presence. They have no measure, no comparability whatsoever to the godliness which is being manifest. Which is also the same idea as Hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz ani molei. That the Eibush says, I fill heaven and earth. And of course, you know the contrast which is brought by Likutei Torah and Kama Mekayim, if we learned about it. That the opposite of Es Hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz ani molei is molei kol ha'aretz kveidei. What's the difference between the pasuk Es Hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz ani molei and molei kol ha'aretz kveidei? The first difference is that in the pasuk Es Hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz, heaven and earth are both represented. In the word molei kol ha'aretz kveidei, only earth is represented. That's the first difference. So molei kol ha'aretz kveidei is about only one world, Aretz. Es Hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz includes all of the worlds. But in addition, that in the pasuk Es Hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz, Hashem is referred to as Ani, and in the pasuk molei kol ha'aretz kveidei, Hashem is referred to as Kavod. And of course, Kavod means ha'ara, Kavod means chitzenius. So Ani goes on Ein Seif HaSeif of Kalamin, which is Shava in Shemayim and Aretz. Kavod goes in Ein Seif, which is Mamala Kalamin, which is in Aretz in one way, and Shemayim in a different way, which is why the pasuk says Malak Kol Aretz Kveidei. As Helem, since it's in the heaven and the earth equally, it's hidden from all of the worlds. Kileis mach shavat fisa beklal, no vessel can hold Ein Seif, which is Seif of Kalalmin. Ve'ein ein mislab b'shum keli, it cannot be revealed in any vessel, bebechinas eir pnimi, in a revealed light kind of a way, in a way which is available to us. Ki im bebechinas ha'chochma levado, on the level of chochma. What is a keli for Ein Seif? And as he's now adding, what is a keli for Ein Seif HaSeif of Kalalmin? What is a keli for Igol HaGadol? Chochma. Shabahu mislabish bechinas eir pnimi, through and in. Chochma, Ein Seif, can be revealed in Eifen pnimi. And Valyada, through Chochma, Nimshachu Peil b'sharat Sfiras, and then it comes down to the remaining Sfiras. I'll tell you this in chapter 35 in Agod, which I mentioned before, and also in Perek Yud Ches and Yud Tes and in Perek Gimel, because of Chochma's bittul. And the bittul is, Chochma is the opposite of all the other midas and Sfiras and Kelim. Because Chochma doesn't take something to itself, it surrenders to it. And that allows it to have a connection to Ein Seif. And once it has the connection to Ein Seif, it connects Ein Seif to all the Sfiras and all the Midas, to all the Madregas in each of the four worlds. And therefore, I'm starting on line 112. When one is preoccupied with learning Torah, we draw the Eibush Tereshi is Galei Leini, should reveal to us in an inner light, or in other words, in a revealed light. Torah acts as a conductor, so to speak, that on the one hand that receives the Ein Sof, and on the other hand that's incapable of affecting that the Ein Sof which it receives should be in a state of Gili, it should be revealed. And of course revealed means that the world or the vessel should actually experience and receive the Ein Sof as though it's worthy of it. Key, because on the one hand, that Torah is Gashmiim, Torah is involved in physical things, the form, the substance, the subject matter of the Torah is physical things. You have so many mitzvahs and so many halachas and so many dinim that deal with physical things. A cow, a sheep, and so on. And we're able to understand the Torah because these physical things are easy for us to comprehend. And as far as this is concerned, Torah acts as a vehicle, as a medium through which Torah can be understood by us. But at the same time, inside the Chochma of Torah, you have Chochma of Atzilus, Shebetecha, Dafke Melubesh Ein Sof, and in Chochma of Atzilus rests Ein Sof, and how does Ein Sof rest? In Chochma of Atzilus bebechinas pnimi kanal, in a revealed light and an inner light and so forth. That ma she'eini mislabe b'shum kli, you cannot go into any vessel. Bebechinas pnimi, in a revealed light. Kiyim bebechinas makev cholo kanal, you can only go in a hidden light or an indirect light. And Chochma is a keli for it. So that there's a duality here. And the duality is interesting and it deserves attention. And now and here is really not the place to comprehensively explain how Torah works. Which the Rebbe Rashab in the Hemsh Chaim Beis in the third Chelik, I believe, attempts to explain the duality of Torah. Torah is really not a keli for Ein Sof. In other words, if being a keli for something means being able to understand it and being able to internalize it, Torah is not a keli for Ein Sof. But Torah is a lakus, and it's bittul. And because Torah is a lakus and Torah is bittul, Ein Sof is able to rest upon it, even though it is gevul, even though it is finite, and the Ein Sof is infinite. And the duality of Torah is that we're able to understand the form of the Torah, and consequence, and on the other hand, the Ein Sof rests in the Torah. When we understand the chitzonius of Torah, the form of the Torah, pardon me, which is a worldly thing, and therefore we're able to understand it, we have a connection, we even have an experience of Ein Sof, which is Chochmei law, because of the bittul property of Torah. So it's not as simple, you can't see Chochma like a Talmud and a Rav. Chochma is a kli for Ein Sof. There's no such thing as a kli for a Rav. You have to see Chochma as somebody who is so bittul that he can relate to things which he can't even relate to. He can open himself up and receive things that he's not able to open himself up to and receive him, simply because of his capacity to surrender, simply because of his ability to not to have to understand things in a way that you have to grasp it and grip it and control it. That makes one a keli for Ein Sof. And that's what Torah is. The chitzonius of Torah we understand. Torah b'chlal is bittul, and as a consequence in Torah you have Ein Sof. Says the Rebbe on line 118, that's the meaning of the two words, Havaya Lekein. Going back to the beginning of today's class. Because one begins with Shema Yisrael. And Shema Yisrael is the presenting of oneself, it's the bittul of oneself, the godliness. Shema is the bittul of Bina, if you will. Yisrael is the bittul of Chochma, Bina to higher than Bina, and Chochma to higher than Chochma, and so forth. As a consequence of Havaya Lekein, that godliness, which is Ein Sof, which in and of itself has no relationship with worldliness, as a Lekeinu, as a Lekash Halonu. And again, going back to the point I made at the beginning of today's class, it's unser Gott, unser Gettlichkeit, it's our personal godliness. A person through bittul is a kli for Ein Sof. Now, exactly how you understand the revelation of Ein Sof, how can you be a keli for something you're not a keli for? Ein Sof is infinite. And any kind of vessel you could possibly be is by definition finite. How you experience Ein Sof when you're a finite vessel is complicated, it's not simple. But the fact nevertheless remains that in a place of Echad HaEmes, in a place where there's bittul, so then Havaya, which goes on Ein Sof, HaSev of Kalam, and Lekeinu is revealed as our personal God. That's what Chochma is in each world, and that's what Torah is in each world. It's a kli, it's a seat through which Ein Sof comes into the lower worlds. So although arguably Ein Sof and worlds should have no relationship, because Ein Sof is Ein Sof and Elam is Lashon Helam, world is world, there is one point in worlds where these two opposites, Ein Sof and world, meet. Basically, it's Chochma and specifically it's Torah. It's in the Rebbe now, line 119, once there is even one sfira, one midah, one place where Ein Sof is able to rest in Gevul, namely Torah or Chochma. However, we understand Ashra of Ein Sof in something which is Madad Mugbal. Because of the bittul of Chacham, the bittul of Chacham, the bittul of Teirei Ein Sof Res, therefore you have a Havaya Elokeinu. Once godliness comes into worldliness in a way that it's revealed, then it comes to the rest of the spheres. The Shema Echad means that godliness is not only revealed in Chochmah, but through Chochmah it's revealed in all of the worlds. And this is really the point that Alter Rebbe is making in Tanya chapter 18, Perek Yud Ches, where the Alter Rebbe says every single Yid has a point of Chochmah. And it could be Chochmah of Malchus Dasi, it doesn't make a difference. But the point of Chochmah gives him a connection to all the points of Chochmah until Chochmah Elah, Shabbat Sheira, Erein Tzei Baruch Hu Mamish. And the same is the point he's making here. Because there is one place in each world, one Nakud in each world, the Chochmah of each world and the Teira of each world, that because of its bittul is open to Ein Sof. However we understand the relationship between the Chitzonius and the Pnimius, between the Keli and the Eid, as a result, it's available to the whole world. Kihine. His Rebbe is going to develop this idea that Havaya Echad means how a godliness is brought down not only into Chochmah, but to much lower as well. So the Rebbe prefaces by talking about the word Echad. Milas Echad, the translation of the word Echad. Einei Meir al Yichudei Yisbarach can't possibly be a term that is meant to denote God's unity. In other words, if Echad is talking about the Eibush that he is by himself, we would never use the word Echad. We would use the word Yochid. Why? Since in truth there is nothing other than godliness. It's not correct to use the word Echad when you're talking about godliness, which is Eineid Mulvade, because Echad connotes a collection of many. Shalosh and Zed, this word Echad leishayech rak, you can't use the word one. Only b'davar hamispared u'mischalek, that naturally it crumbles, naturally it divides. V'af al pekein hakal echad, and still, in spite of the diversity or the tendencies towards division, there is a unity. That's where the word Echad can be used. Like it says in Shulchan Aruch and it's brought in Chassidus, that the Aleph goes on the Eibishter. The Ches goes in the seven heavens and the earth, and the Dalet goes in the four corners of the world. So the word Echad is employed because you're dealing with many things, heaven and earth, east, west, north, south, and at the same time, unity. Kmei, for example, when you refer to Torah and you say these and these are the words of the living God, and you identify the Eibishter by the name of Lekip, because there's many. Although they're diverse, they're different, they're opposite, they're all connected to the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's Taich Elu ve'elu divayelekim chayim. There's many paths in Torah, there's many aspects of godliness, and in spite of the many, they're really one. And that's where the word Echad is employed. And therefore, if you were dealing with Echad the Emes, if you were dealing with Hashem as He is alone, you would never say the word Echad. It's not the appropriate term. You would say the word Yachid. So I guess if you wanted to put it into form, you would say that Havaya Elokeinu is not connected to Echad, Havaya Elokeinu is connected to Yachid. But once the Ein Sof has come into Chochmah, once the Ein Sof has come into Torah, as we discussed before, through Havaya Echad, it's made in all of the other spheres. But here we're not going to say Yachid, here we're going to say Echad. Ella, the answer is the Koyal Medeis of Yisbarach. We're dealing with Eibish's Kfayachal emotional attributes of Chesed, Gevurah, and so on, kindness, severity, and so on. The Hainu, in other words, the Hagam, Shem Dvarim Nifradim. Although, when you're talking about the Midas of the Eibush Kfayachal, you're talking about separate, disparate things. Ukimat Shnei Hafchim, as though they're opposites. Because as everybody understands, Shabamokam Shesh Chesed L'Shayek Gvurah, where there's Chesed, there can't be Gvurah. Where there's Gvurah, there can't be Chesed. They're opposites, although this is a bit complicated, because there's no such thing as Chesed without Gevurah, and there's no such thing as Gevurah without Chesed, unless you're dealing with something very extreme. But nevertheless, on a Chitzenius Dika level, Chesed and Gevurah are opposites. V'af al pikein, in spite of the fact that there are 7 midas or 6 midas, and each one is different and opposite from the others. Nevertheless, hakalecha, they all fuse together to create one form, one body called Ze'er Ampin. Since this is a convergence, a bringing together many into one, we say Echad. And that's the meaning of the words of the Shem Echad. In the words Havaya Lekenu, you're bringing down Ein Sof into Chochmah, that although the vessel is limited, although the Torah is limited, because of its bittul Ein Sof rests on Chochmah, once Ein Sof rests on Chochmah, it comes down into Bina. Umeshamnim Shechlamidas Gamken, then it comes down into the 7 emotional attributes, which are diverse, which are many. Leyes bahem, to be in them gamkein also bittul v'hiskalalus, a bittul and an inclusiveness or an integration or a unification of parts. Ulameheve yechad v'yechad, and in spite of the fact that there's so many, they should join together and become one. So it says in Siddur base, of course, in the pasuk in Tanakh, L'cho ad Hashem agdula v'agvura v'gemer. There's different meanings, and we all know that in this pasuk have agdula v'agvura v'teferes v'netzach v'yahid. And then the word kail goes on Yossi. And then it says the second time, L'cho ad Hashem mamlach, which goes in the 7 midas. Gedula, of course, is chesed. So Gedula, Gevura is chesed, Gevura, Teferes, Netzach, Hayid, and kail is Yossi, and mamlach is malchus. But the key word in this pasuk is the word L'cho. Because Gedula by itself and Gevura by itself are opposites. But Hashem is one. And when the midas serve the one Hashem, they also become one. Shakel b'teilim l'cha, all are nullified to the l'cha ta'akadosh baruch hu. Ve'einam eilam b'shem klal, and therefore they're not identified individually by separate, by diverse names. The lav mikol ilan midas v'chulu, because in the presence of the l'cha, the division of the midas, the forms of the midas, what separates from them is not present, and therefore you have a Hashem echad. So you say echad because you have many which are being unified. And you say echad because the many have been unified successfully, because Ein Sof is shining into them. So, when a Yid has the bittul, represented by the words of Shema Yisrael, godliness is revealed, Save of Kalam is revealed in the worlds, and in the Torah, the Shem Elekenu, and then it comes on into all of the midas, which is Hashem echad. Continues the Rebbe on line 131, and he continues and he says even more. And once the godliness comes on into Chochmah Vayelekenu, and once the godliness comes on into the Midas, Havaya Echad, it comes down into the lower 3 worlds, Bria, Yetzir, Asiya, Mamshich, Yichud, Zeh, Baruch, Shem, Keved, Malchus, Aliyah, Levad. We draw down this union to bring down the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the lower worlds. And of course, you've heard this from me before. Let's translate the words. Baruch, you want to draw down Shem, Kived, Malchus, the name, the glory, the kingship. A light of a light of a light. Ha'ara, the ha'ara, the ha'ara. Shem is a ha'ara, Kved is a ha'ara, and Malchus is a ha'ara. Or Shem, covered, and Malchus are all levushim, like you have in the psukim. And since this is a ha'ara and a levush, and this is a ha'ara and this is a levush, and this is a ha'ara and this is a levush, these 3 words are ha'ara, the ha'ara, the ha'ara. Baruch, you're drawing down from the Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, from the Ein Sof which is in Chochmah, and from the Ein Sof which is in the Midas of Atzilus, in Ha'ara, the Ha'ara, the Lo Olam, to the worlds, including to the lowest world, namely our physical world, Vo'ed. Now the Rebbe says in Tanya, from the Zayar, at Vod is B'chalufi Asfen Echad. The Dalet is the same, the Vav is in place of the Aleph, and the Ayin is in place of the Ches, the Vav is in the place of the Aleph according to Ahavi, which is 1 Aleph base, and the Ayin is in the place of the Dalet according to the Ayin is in the place of the Ches according to a different Aleph base, according to the principle of Achaheh, and the Dalet remains the same. So the idea is, and we've had this conversation many times, talking about the Anshe Yeriche, that if you're holding a Madrega of Atzilus, you want to say Baruch Shem and so on. So Echad and Vod, they're both Achdus. The difference is only Echad is Ein Sof is revealed, which is in Atzilus, to Havaya Lekenu and Havaya Echad. And Vod, as it comes down to the lower 3 worlds, Bri Yetzir Nasir, where there's a Ha'ara, the Ha'ara, the Ha'ara of Ein Sof, which also felt Achdus, but of course it's a much lower Achdus. Baruch Lashon Amshacha, the word Baruch means to draw down to Nimshach, B'Bri Yetzir Nasir. It comes down to the lower 3 worlds, Bri Yetzir Nasir. Moreover, it doesn't only come down to the Pnimius of the lowest 3 worlds, which is the Spheres, but Ubeichol is Gamten, it comes down to the Chitzenius of the lower 3 worlds, which are basically Klipa, Bebechinas yichod k'mei l'mala b'atzilas. There should be a unity with Ein Sof on a level of l'chod. There should be unity with Ein Sof on a level of the Shema Chod, like there is in Atzilus. Shanim shach gam lahem eid Ein Seif. In those lower worlds as well, is drawn down the godliness which is Ein Seif li is bittul v'izkal as v'chol. There should be bittul and unification, integration. The bittul brings the Ein Seif, and the Ein Seif affects an increase in bittul and eskalus and esachtos, as he explained earlier by the word l'chod. So the word Shema Yisrael is what we give of ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Havaya Lakeinu, and Havaya Echad, and Baruch Shem Keved Mechus Leilam Vad is how the godliness is reciprocated, the godliness is brought back down to the various different levels. The Chochmah, Tatzilas, and the B'ri Yitzir and Asiyah. Line 142, and of course I'm skipping a Ha'ara, which is from the Tzemach Tzedek, where he brings a variety of different allusions to the same. Between the difference between Baruch Shem and Shema Yisrael, Yechud Atah, Yechud Elah, and so on. Says the Rebbe on line 142, and once godliness is revealed in Chachma, in Natzilos, and the lower three worlds, you then respond with love. You want godliness. And how much do you want godliness on the level of B'chol Meidecha, which is infinite? As you all know that the word Ahava, Aleph, Hey, Beis, Hey, is from the word Ratz, Ova, Aleph, Beis, Hey. How much does it want on a level of B'chol Meidecha, which is Bechinas Beligavul? Hainu, this means Lot says, Bechinas Keili Gvul, to go out of the vessel, to go out of the limitation. Shah Keili Hu Amag, the vessel limits the air. And in this case, although the vessel normally limits the aid, somehow the vessel is able to receive aid on a level of Ein Seif. And the reaction that the keli, that the vessel has to receiving godliness on a level of Ein Seif is B'chol Meidach. And this is the Gevura, which is the response for the Chesed. Since the first Parsha, Krishma, is a Parsha where Hashem reveals Ein Seif in an incredible way, an infinity, which is the ultimate chesed, the response of the person is gevura, is his battles, to get lost in godliness. This continues in the entire parsha, is that the light should depart from the vessel. And this is the duality of it. This is at the beginning of the class, I explained that frequently, when you're talking about real scenarios, very, very deep scenarios, the outside and the inside are opposites. The first Parsha of Krishma is all about Gili Elikus, revealing Ein Sof, which is the ultimate chesed. And the response is Gevura, is his battles. When godliness comes to you in an incredible way, you throw yourself at the godliness, you lose yourself in the godliness, which is Gevura. Now Gevura is Ha'Allah, to raise up. And we all know Leilateyu Barala Shevas Yetzara, the Eibusha did not create the world for us to disappear, to go out of this world. We call that the Nadav and Aviyu syndrome. The Eibusha created the world which would bring godliness down. Here, the revelation of Ein Seif causes a Hizbatlus, where you get lost on the Ein Seif, which is the opposite of bringing godliness down. And there could be various different ways of explaining why in this case it's okay. There's a Remez and the Yeres HaKedish and Kuntres Achren. The second one, where he brings that there's a lost man on a level of Mesiras Nefesh, which brings the Likus down, even though you're going out of yourself completely. But I don't want to go into this question. What we need to understand is that the first Parsha of Krishma is Hashem gives the world so much, and we respond by running away from the world. We react to the chesed with Gevura. And the Rebbe says on line 145, this departure, this ascent, is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Mab, 42, which is the concept of Gevura. It is known, why they shem Mab. That the concept of ascent is the Eibusha's name Mab. Now I can't tell you for sure what this means, but to me it seems that this is an allusion to the tefillah of Ona B'Cheich. Look in the Hagah, he makes reference to the Membeis Masois. There's a tefillah called Ona B'Cheich, which is called Tefillah Reb Nechunya ben Akana. And parenthetically, tangentially, I have a number of classes on my website, inside Chassidishe.org. If you go to my tefillah section about Karbonis, you'll see that I have several classes on Ona B'Cheich, which I gave years ago. Ona B'Cheich has 42 words. And Honor b'chayach is used in such cases where you cannot say a Kaddish. Like, for example, in the morning before Yom Kaiman, Friday night before L'Chadaydi, in Kishmish Alamita, in Sfiras HaOimer, and so on. Because the idea of Honor b'chayach is to raise up. The concept of Kaddish, Yiskadal v'Yiskadal, Shema Rab, is also to raise up, to go from a low world to a higher world. Every Kaddish, the beginning of davening, and before Baruch Hu, and then after Shemini Esrei, and after Avolotzion, and after Shir Shalayim, they're all aliyahs, going from one level to another level. In instances where you cannot say Kaddish, or perhaps for some other reason, we substitute the Kaddish with Honor b'chayach. And the 42 words of Honor b'chayach represent ascent, going up. Why? Because they're only 6 times 7 rather than 7 times 7. 7 midas times 6. We need to say Chesed, Gevura, Teferes, Netzach, Yesed, Malchus. How each one includes Chesed, Gevura, Teferes, Netzach, and Yesed, and there is no Malchus. Because Malchus is the concept of Hamshacha. Malchus is the concept of bringing godliness from the higher world to the lower world. So Honor b'chayach, which is 42, represents Aliyah and Nistalkus. The first Pasha Krishma that Rabbi said in the beginning of this Maamar, from Vahafta, I believe, has 42 words, which is the concept of Gevura. And the idea is that when the Eibishter gives us godliness on a level of Ein Seif, we respond by being lost in that godliness. We react to his chesed with our Gevura. This is why also every night we also say this tefillah. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is an allusion to Honor b'chayach. You can't say Kaddish, there's no minion. So you say Honor b'chayach to cause the neshama to rise. You have 7 times 6. And 7 times 6 is 42. In other words, each one of the 7 midas has 6. What's the cheshbon of 6? Ha'alah. How is the cheshbon of 6 ha'alah? Shisha teva, 6 words on each line. Like it says in Sforim, that the 6 words on each line of Honor b'chayach correspond to B'shtayim yechase pono, B'shtayim yechase raglo, B'shtayim ye'efif. 2 wings cover his face, 2 wings cover his legs, and 2 wings he uses to fly. And if you've ever read the Meir Nevuchim, the Rambam brings that in one Nevuah, in the Nevuah of Yeshaya, you have Malachim with 6 wings. And in the other Nevuah, in the Nevuah of Yecheskel, Malachim with only 4 wings. And I believe the Gemara says in Chagigi has to do with Miyat Hadmus, that in the times of the Beis HaMikdash there was 6 wings. In the time of Golus, when there was the Miyat Hadmus, you have only 4 wings. So the Rambam explains the significance of this. The reason for the 2 wings to cover the face of the Malachim is that if it gets too much light from higher than the Malach, it'll destroy the Malach. So the first 2 wings are a levush to cover. Then you have 2 wings to cover the legs, the feet. Because of the world below the Malach will get too much light from the Malach, it will also explode, destroy it. So you have another 2 wings which again cover. So the 4 wings which you have in the Merkava of Yecheskel simply act as a tzimtzum and a helam v'hesta. So in the Nevuah of Yecheskel you have only 4 wings, and the wings act simply as a levush, which is Ma'alim U'Masta. But in the levush of Yeshaya, you have 2 more wings which cause the person, the malach, to fly. And the Rambam explains the allusion to flying. It means lightness, it means spirituality, and so forth. And these 2 wings cause ascent up for the neshama, for the malach to rise. So the number 6 represents that even though you have to have a levush to cover the face from too much, and you have to have a levush to cover the legs from giving too much, you have the remaining 2 wings which allow you to fly, to ascend upward, which is the concept of Gvura. Ubishtayim ye'efef min hakli, to float from the vessel, la'les u'le'istalek l'mayla, to ascend and depart upwards. It says, Gvura shebechesed v'chulu. This is Gvura shebechesed. In other words, the oir of the first Pasha of Krishma is chesed, the kli of the first Pasha of Krishma is Gvura. Concludes the Rebbe on line 150, as the pshat replacing the light of one with the vessel of the next. And if in the first class of this shir, we talked about the meaning of achlifu d'chtaya b'chlal, and how here achlifu d'chtaya means a little bit differently, that because the inside is one, the outside is another, or because the outside is one, the inside is another. In this case, because of what God is giving us, is so much chesed, what we give Him, we can afford it to be gvura. Okay? The vessel is gevura, and the light that rests is chesed, and it's he and the senes. That because the Eibush is giving us so much light, therefore there's gevura, and because there's gevura, we're clear for so much light. Ki Chassidishe Chesed, the first Parsha of Krishma, the Oyer, the first Parsha of Krishma, like I said earlier, is Chesed. In other words, godliness being revealed to them, and above a hafta of a game which causes one to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Gvura. But the Eibush to give such an abundance of godly light, Gili of Ein Sof, as it was in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. And as a consequence, Yabechinas Kli HaChesed, the vessel is Chesed, Aval Ha'eru Gvura Vistalkus Lamayla, the light is ascending upwards. Although the first parsha of Krishma is in Yonei Chesed, the response to the incredible Chesed the Eibush gives us to go out of itself. V'zehu Shem Mab, which is significant to the Eibush's name of 42 words. And of course, you know that the Gemara in Kedushin mentions, there's so many names for the Eibush, but the Gemara mentions the Shem Yud Beis of 12 words and the Shem of Mab of 42 words, and the Rambam brings them down a little bit and discusses them. But Api Chassidus, this is the concept of Gevurah. This is why Kriya Shema has this name and has this Bechin of Gevurah. The purpose is Pnim is Bechinas Eir, that it should be revealed, the union of light. The intent and the end. The entire idea revolves, is to reveal Ein Sof. But in order to reveal Ein Sof, you have to have this union of Gevurahs. This idea of Gevurah is the outer dimension, or the reaction to the Chesed. The Eibush gives us Chesed and we react with Gevurah. But what is the Eibush giving us? Which is Klei Chesed Kanal. The vessel and the Ein Sof, which the Eibush gives us, is Chesed, which is the Pnimius. The Pnimius means it's what we're getting. And the Chitzenius means what we show and what we give back as Inyan HaGevuras. And this is the first Parsha of Krishma. And of course, as you see on line 165, which is the beginning of Mitzvah of the class we're going to do next week, that the second Parsha of Krishma is the other way around. That the Oyer is Chesed, and the Kli is Gevurah. In other words, since the Eibush is giving us so much less, we respond to it with the attitude of Chesed, as we'll see in Mitzvah Hashem next week.